All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So in today's class, we are going to be talking about data protection, how to administer data protection. So what are the things we're going to be looking at? So we've been talking about resources, implementing all those resources, deploying them, and the likes. But at some point, we need to start thinking about if there is a failure or if anything happens, how do we recover our resources? So we are going to be looking at data protection in this particular learning objective. So what are we going to be looking at? So we have introduction to Azure backups. What can we back up? How do we back up? What are the resources that we need to create when we want to back up? So these are things we are going to be looking at. Yes, I can see, as you can see also, that how to protect your virtual machines using Azure backup. So are we saying it is only virtual machines that we can back up? Are there other resources that we can actually back up? So these are things we're going to be looking at. So aside this particular topic, we are still going to complete just like we did last week, because I think we've got few slides on this particular one. We are going to complete the Azure Administrator, class today. So basically, it's just the theoretical part. So next week we'll start, looking at all the labs one after the other. And like I said the other time, once we're done with the lab, we're going to look at real life scenario, build some stuff, implement some stuff, maybe create some resources by leveraging the portal, by leveraging IAC like Terraform, ARM template, biceps, and the likes. We're just going to look at, everything we've been talking about. So how do we now implement this? So that we don't just make it theoretical, So like I said, the learning objectives for today is, introduction to Azure backup, protection of your virtual machines, by leveraging Azure backup. And the last one is going to be the lab 10. We've actually not looked at any of those labs, but like I said, by next week we'll start looking at them. So, what do you mean? That was a quick one. I think I pressed the wrong button. Okay, so that's fine. So introduction to Azure Backup. So what are things we're going to look at there? What is Azure Backup? How Azure Backup actually works? Azure Business Continuity Center, before it used to be Backup Center. Now they change it to Business Continuity Center. So what that gives you, it gives you that single pane of, everything you need to back up, and of all your resources can be found there. Now, if you want to back up anything, you can actually implement that from there. So we are going to look at that business continuity center, then demonstration of how to back up Azure file share, and you could see also if you are actually going to go for the AZ-104 exam after this particular class, you can see what you're going to be looking at, how to create recovery service vaults. I was talking about the fact that when we want to back up, are there resources that we back up to? Are there resources that we even back up? So before you could actually back up any of your resource, you need to create a vault. So the kind of vault that you create, either the recovery service vault or the Azure backup vault, depends on what you want to back up. What resource are you trying to back up? So if you're backing up like a virtual machine, might be different from where you're backing up, let's say storage account. So if it all depends on what you're actually backing up. So so the vault that you create depends on that. Then we're going to look at how to actually create some backup policies. What are different things that we can actually do on the ad? Can we configure it? Do we have different policies? And those are things we are going to be looking at if you're actually looking for, looking at writing the exam after this particular course. But it all comes, in this particular learning objective. We're still going to talk about it. So what are Azure backups? I do not need to define this. everyone understand when we back up, what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have a clone, we have, a duplicate of whatever resource that we have in there. And how does this work? In the sense, so before I even get to the fact that, or look at how this works, what are some of the resources that we can actually back up? So we can back up resources within our Azure environment. We can even back up resources that are not within Azure, like our on-premises, resources. So what is a backup, and what are some of the things we are going to look at? So I just said we can back up on-premises resources or on-premises servers, or as the case might be. And how do we do this? What are things, how do we connect the on-premises environment? Surely it's not going to be VPN in this case. So in this case, we need to download like a software and install on that particular server that we want to back up to, back up from. So we called that particular software an agent. So we can actually install that particular agent so that that particular, resource can actually show in Azure, and we are able to, back up that particular agent. So on the left hand side, you can see the backup agent, just installing it, and we have some built-in backup, which are within the Azure environment. There is no point installing an agent on, resources that exist within Azure, because those are actually being implemented before now. So when you want to back up resource like virtual machine, they manage disks, file share, SQL Server, database, Azure blobs, and the likes. You do not need to install any agent to be able to do this. So the backup service, how does it now work? You can see the architectural diagram that shows the backup service. So we've got like a recovery point. Depending on the kind of backup you're doing, it might be incremental, it might be full backup. So when you have a full backup in place, where let's say the first time you're actually backing up, you want to back up everything on that particular virtual machine. Let's take virtual machine in this case. Then after then, there is no need for you backing up everything. You just want to back up what has actually changed. If anything has actually changed on that particular machine, then that's what we call incremental. So you are just backing up, any changes afterward. So when you create a recovery point, or every backup that you do, it's tagged a recovery point, you can actually return back to that particular point and say, this is my restore point, this is where I want to restore from. So it has got a lot of things. We're going to be talking about this. How do you manage the storage management within there? How do we manage the resiliency and availability? We all know when we start talking about availability, we all know some of the options that we leverage on, the data tiering. And these are some of the things you can actually use, just to secure your backup. You can see multi-user authorization, multi-factor authentication, policy management. We talked about Azure policy. You can actually leverage these if you want, why leveraging the Azure backup. Access control, who will have access to be able to perform this, this particular activity. Then monitoring and reporting. You want to see, how many resources has been backed up. You want to see how many resources failed, and you want to see how many times you have actually restored from maybe any of those recovery points. So these are things we are going to be looking at. So how does this backup actually works? I'll just tell you that for every resource that you want to back up, like I said, we need what we call a vault. So we create a vault in Azure. Now, the kind of vault we are actually going to create depends on the kind of resource we are backing up. So we've got two types of vault. We have the backup vault and the recovery vault. So but aside that, also we've got backup policies also. Within that backup policy, we are going to define the source where the data is going to come from, the kind of vault that we want to leverage on. Is it backup vault or recovery vault? And the kind of schedule. So do we want this to be done every day? Do we want once in a week and the likes? And this is how it works. So majorly we'll create our vault, then you create like the backup policy, which includes the data source, the storage vault that you want to back up to, and the schedule, And like I said, we've got these backup center, and that was then, but now it's called the business continuity center, where which gives you these single pane of truth, like a unified management experience where you are able to see every activity is related to your backup of on all the resources. So we are going to be looking at that. Stop pressing this thing. I think maybe I'm in a hurry. I'm not. Okay, so this is how the business continuity unit looks like. I'm just going to pop that too so that we could actually see. Just give me a minute, please. Just good. So I'd rather just look that through from my own, but okay, still loading. So we have this single pane of glass, like I said. You are able to see everything. I just want to show you, but this my Azure environment is still loading. You are able to back up to protect any resource. Just give me a minute. Yep. That is business continuity center. Yep. Okay, fine. Okay, I'm dragging the wrong one. So this is my own environment. Even within my own environment, I still don't have, a lot of resource being backed up because this is typically a test environment, but you won't try this on production. So you've got a lot of things here. So I'm just going to drop down all these guys. And like I said, let's say you want to configure protection, which is the backup. The first thing you need to do is you creating a vault. Like I said, the kind of vault that you'd create depends on the kind of resource that you want to back up. I don't know why. Let's just hold on. This is okay. So so now it's saying the resource should be managed by Azure. Is it not Azure? So it all depends on what we are trying to back up. So if it's Azure, what kind of resource do you want to back up? Now you can see immediately I selected this Azure virtual machine. The solution is the Azure backup. If I pop in, okay, Azure Dix, just give me a minute. I should be no. So Azure Blob, yep, that's to give me a minute. I know there's some that should be recovery. Okay, so I believe all these Azure side. Okay, so it's okay. Just give me a minute. I'm so sure. So if I continue, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now it all depends on what you are trying to do, and this was what I was looking for. Now, when I have the Azure virtual machine, it's saying, okay, you need to create a recovery service vault. So when I try to, back up like an Azure disk, it's telling me to create, a backup vault, but it still works almost the same way. Everything we are still trying to do is to make sure that our resources are actually, protected from failure or from, you know, activities that are not planned. Let's just wait. I'm just going to go back to my business continuity unit. And so how do we, the first thing we need to do, you can see is to actually create like a vault. Then after creating a vault based on the resource that we want to manage, then we'll create like the policy. So all these things that things we're still gonna do. Now this is checking what are the resources that are actually protected based on the backup that you've done within this environment. I've got so many before, but just because the other subscription has been disabled, so I'm not able to see most of those items. They've been deleted. So I can actually see the under the protected item, which comes under the protection inventory for the manage, where we'll create the vault and the policies. So if you want to create the vault, like I said, all depends on the resource you're trying to back up. So if you're actually backing up like an Azure disk, you want to use the backup vault. If you're actually leveraging, or you actually backing up the old virtual machine itself, you might want to leverage the recovery service vault. So this is taking a while, but surely we'll come back to these when we start looking at the practical sections. So this is how it looks like. Like I said, a single pane of glass that manage all the business continuity, data redundancy protection. We have action center to protect your Azure, your hybrid, or even your edge environment. Regardless of where your resource is, you can actually back up those resources. Even when they are actually on premises, you can install the backup agent so that you can actually bring that resource to Azure. A skill monitoring capability, you can even see that we've got the monitoring. You can see the jobs that is running under the monitoring. So if a backup job is actually running, if you're actually restoring back from a backup, you can actually see it as a job. You can see the report also of the number of failures, number of successful activities, in progress. You get the reports just from all the jobs that actually run. So you can also export this to CSV, which I know. If there is an issue with any of maybe the backup or stuff, you'll get an alert. You can also look at some of the metrics. So lots of things there that you can actually pop in instead of going to each of those results and try to do a backup from there. You can just come to that business continuity center and create whatever backup you want to create from that particular single pane of glass. So how do we configure? Let's demonstrate the backup of Azure File Share. We are asked to configure, storage account with file share, create a recovery vault, configure the file share backup, and verify So I'm just going to, let's see if we could quickly pop this in. So I'm going to start with the storage account. I'm so sure I've got some here, but we can still create a new storage account. I'm not sure if I have anyone with a file share, that's why. But I can look at yeah. So we all know how to create a storage account, so it shouldn't be an issue. And so we look at the file share. Let's see. Okay, lovely. I've got one with which I've created last time, I guess. It's even good. But I'm so sure when you want to create your blob storage, your file share, it's still gonna be the same thing. I think we discuss how you can actually leverage this. So I'm not going to be doing that again. So I'm just gonna move to create a recovery service vault, then configure the file share backup. So let's go back here. I don't So to create the vault, so I'll click on the vault here. Okay, so vault. Now you can see this even gives us a better visibility on which resource we can actually back up on, depending on the vault that we've created. So you can see on the left, when you create a recovery vault, then you're looking at backing up the old virtual machine. You're looking at backing up SQL within your virtual machine. So you can see majority of what you have on the left are IaaS related, even when we still got some other ones on the right hand side also that are IaaS. But majority of the ones on the left are IaaS related. So Azure file share within our storage. So that means whatever we're actually trying to do now, since we are trying to back up file share within the storage account, then we're actually looking at the recovery vault. But if we're actually doing a snapshot of maybe the Azure disks, we want to back up Azure Blob, Kubernetes service, Azure database for Postgre, then we'll turn to the backup vault. So let's see. So this is going to create like a vault here. So I'm going to just pick any of these guy and say test. Let me check something. Okay, immutability. I don't want that. So we're still going to talk about. I know we're still going to talk about the redundancy option for this particular vault. So you can actually see just the same thing we've actually been talking about when it comes to different resources that we'll work with. So let's wait. So any question here? Okay, so if you guys do not have any question,
Sorry, I have a question.
yeah,
I just wanted to ask, in real life scenario, do you actually use the portal to do this backup, or
yeah.
you use the cloud shell environment?
No, so it all depends on what you're actually doing. We try to make sure that we don't use portal for anything, just for easy management. So we rather push anything programmatically. Do you understand? Either by leveraging maybe um, PowerShell script, or even the IAC within our environment. Do you understand? But there are some
Yeah.
things you can actually also do with the, while creating this. Maybe you do not have the IAC script yet, then you just want to create this using the portal. So a lot of people are still using the portal. It's not as if you're gonna be crucified if you use the portal. But the thing is, it's just for easy management, and that's why we leverage the IAC or PowerShell or the other scripts like Bash and the likes. So using the portal is not too bad, but if you want easy management, then you want to leverage on. There are a lot of other features or reasons why you might want to leverage IAC or do this programmatically than coming to the portal to do any of those operations.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like I
Thanks.
said, if you guys do not have any question, I would like to ask this question. We've been talking about the fact that when you want to back up any of those resources, it depends on depending on the kind of resource that you want to back up, you're going to create the vault that suits that particular resource. So we talked about the recovery service vault and also the backup vault. So the question I was thinking you guys are gonna ask is, what's the difference between the backup vault and the recovery vault? Do you understand? Because it will make more sense if we have a very good understanding than just say, oh, okay, depending on the resource. So I will just pop that in. So for recovery vault, it's actually a broader. Okay, let me start with the Azure Backup Vault itself. So this is more like a streamlined storage or container for backing up only Azure native resources. Do you get? Why the recovery vault is more broader, more versatile, and this is used to back up, not only Azure resources, it's also used for disaster recovery, site recovery, and the likes. So it supports, like a wider, how can I put this, range of resource, which also includes on-premises environment or on-premises resource. So if you are looking at just backing up anything, so if you are backing up any Azure native resource, then you are looking at using or leveraging the backup vault. But if it's something that includes resources outside Azure, or you're actually looking at, something you need to have for disaster recovery, in case anything happens, then you might want to have, Azure Recovery Vault in place. So lots of things. It looks more like the same, but the only thing is the Recovery Vault has more capabilities. For anything we're actually doing. So let's say let's go to the resource itself. So we created our recovery vault already. Now you can actually see we can start backing up. We can also enable site recovery. So depending on the item we want to back up. In this particular case, we have to back up still virtual machine. We have to back up file share within the storage. So I'm just going to back up and look for that particular storage account I've created. Mine. Is that storage? So I'm creating a. Okay, let's just pick this one though. Unfortunately, it looks like I've actually created the vault in a different in a different subscription from where the the storage account I wanted to use is. So I'm not going to be able to see that, but at least this shows us how we can actually configure the backup. You can see I'm registering this account so that the recovery service can actually monitor that particular account. And what is going to happen, you can see, is going to enable lock. And that's one of the things the site recovery does, So you can see it's enabling lock on that particular storage account, meaning no one can actually just go there to just delete that particular storage account, because a lock, we all know how to create a lock. When you create a lock on a particular resource, depending on the kind of lock you've created, we've got two locks, right? Read only and the delete. So depending on the kind of lock they were created, you might not be able to modify or delete that particular. But for this one, I'm so sure it actually created a delete lock, which prevent users from actually deleting that particular resource. So once you have that, you need to add the file share. I'm not sure there is any file share within that particular storage account I've selected, but let's see. Okay, it looks like that's fine. Okay, so we've selected the file share. Now the backup policy, under the monitor pane, you can actually see that we've got the manage under the manage plane, we've got the vault and the backup policy. Now the backup policy, what does it entails? we can create a policy, and within the policy, I'm just going to go to the policy and see what we need to set on that particular policy. Now, for the policy, we need to, set the policy name. Then the backup tier. What kind of backup do we want? Do we want to just take a snapshot? Let's say we are backing up a virtual machine. We just want to take a snapshot of that particular machine. Then what's going to be the backup schedule for that particular policy? Is it going to be daily? What time is it going to be running? Then once that is done, we're going to be looking at what are the retention policies in place. How long do we want to retain that particular backup? Do we want to retain it every week? Do we want retention of that particular backup point every day? Yearly. So that's where we now set the retention policy. So once everything is in place, then I can actually go ahead and just enable the backup, and that particular resource will now be monitored within the business continuity center. So I'm not going to, because this particular guy is the one for my cloud shell. So I don't know. I don't want to go encrypt it, but so that's that, and that's how we enable the backup. So you can verify the backup. Okay, let me just pop it up. Let me just enable it, and we can check it later. So that's been deployed, and once that is done, just like the other resources, we can actually go in there and check what we need to check. But for now, I would take it away. So let's continue to protection of the virtual machines. What we looked at the other time was storage account, where we're able to create like a recovery vault, and add that particular file share within that storage account to that particular recovery vault, so that it's being like a clone of it or a snapshot of it is actually created for business continuity purpose. So within this particular objective, what are we going to be looking at? We are going to be looking at options to protect our virtual machine data. Are we just looking at backing up the disks within the machine, or we want to back up the old virtual machine? How do we create machine snapshots in Azure backup? How do we set up the service recovery vault backup option? Backing up virtual machines. How do we restore back from the virtual machine? And there will be a demonstration that shows how virtual machine backup has been done. And then we move on to the manage soft delete, which we understand that when we set up a soft delete on resource, we are trying to prevent accidental deletion. So even if that particular resource has been deleted, it's going to stay in deletion state for the depending on the number of days that we've set. So by default is 7. So let's take the 7 now. It's going to stay in that state for 7 days, and after then, we can or before the expiration of that particular length, we can go in there and restore that particular resource. And one good thing about that thing is no one can even pick a name with that same, like you cannot create you cannot create a new resource with that same name once that particular resource is still within the stop delete time frame. Then we'll wrap it up with how to implement the Azure site recovery. So what are the options when it comes to we backing up virtual machine data? So like I said, there are different options. The first one is for us to take a snapshot. This is the quickest way of backing up, or the most simplest way of backing up your virtual machine. But basically, these are the ones that use managed disks. When you create your virtual machine, it uses the managed disk, so you can actually create a snapshot within the business continuity unit to back up that virtual machine. But if you are looking at backing up not just the data within this disk, you want to back up the entire virtual machine. Um, you know, which supports maybe the application files and the likes. So you want to back up everything. So you want to leverage the Azure backup, and that supports the application consistent backup. This works for both Windows and Linux virtual machine. The last option being the site recovery. And what this does is basically it's not just the backup option now. This also protects your VMs from disaster scenarios. You know, let's say the whole region where your machine is actually on, there is an outage. So you want to have like a site discovery where you are being redirected to a different region without you even knowing. So you have this protection from Azure. So how do we create a snapshot within? And I said this is the simplest and the most easiest way, of backing up your virtual machine data. So what you do is, part of the jobs that we are can actually create within the business continuity center for a virtual machine is you taking a snapshot. So you can see like a snapshot is just going to create like almost the same thing. So what this is going to do is going to create like an image of your virtual machine, and transfer that particular image to a recovery vault. So you take a snapshot, you create like a clone and transfer that particular clone. So just know that if you are to restore back to that particular point, then you're only going to, so if you have done anything on your virtual machine afterward, that's not going to be part of whatever you have when you restore it. So it's that a particular point. So you take a snapshot of that particular VM. Like I said, it's just like you creating an image of that particular VM and storing it within your recovery service vault that you've created. So it talks about some of the advantages of actually leveraging this kind of backup option where it reduces the recovery wait point, because what it has done is it actually create like an image of whatever, and you can actually spin up a new one or a new virtual machine using that particular image, very fast and simple. So how do we set up our recovery service vault backup option? Like I said, when you leverage the recovery service vault, you are not just looking at backing up your Azure resource or Azure resources. You are looking at a more broader solution which can actually bring in even resources that don't live in Azure. And that's what you can actually see on the right hand side where you have the on-premises workload. When you want to back up on-premises workload, like let's say your VMware on Azure on-premises, your Hyper-V that you've created on your server, even on your bare metal recovery. So when we say bare metal, there are some machines that are, let's say pre-configured or not even really, they don't come with operating system and the like, um lot more than that though, but that would be like a simple description of it. So they're not like the normal system that we use. Nothing is actually on there. It's just like giving you like how can I put this um I would say like a skeleton machine, and you are able to just work on it. Majorly, it's always used for maybe backup. You don't have anything within the machine. It's not as if you're using it for any personal stuff. It doesn't contain any application and the like. So it's just currently like a skeleton of whatever machine that we get. So you back up all these guys by leveraging the recovery service vault. Same way when you back up some of the Azure resources, where you want to leverage the recovery services. Like you want to make sure that you know those resources don't go down or they are always protected. Then you want to leverage the recovery service vault. So you can see resources that we can actually leverage on, and you can see majority of them are more IaaS related. So I would even say they are more IaaS related. Even your storage account is still IaaS, so it's not pass. So yeah, because you are the one doing everything, and so they are more of IaaS related. So you can see the virtual machine, SQL in Azure VM, SQL HANA in Azure VM, Hyper-V, VMware on on-premises and the likes. So how do we back up virtual machines? And I've actually created these just the same way we were able to create the one for storage account the other time, where you create a recovery vault. We were able to create this, and you take a snapshot, or that of that particular, virtual machine. So when you take a snapshot of it, is you like creating like an image, and this snapshot is stored or are stored within the recovery service vault, so that anytime when you need it, you can actually restore from there. So for the backup extension to work, the VM agent must actually be installed on the virtual machine. Yeah, so there are lots of things more than these. Even before you can actually back up, you need the backup extension or backup application to have permission on the machine that you want to back up. So using the access control, like the IAM, to be able to assign this particular permission. So there are lots of things we're still going to be looking at when we start doing the labs. So but these are just high level on how to actually achieve this. So after backing up, if there is a need for us to restore back from that particular backup that we've done, how do we now restore from, let's say a virtual machine? You can actually see that, let's see, I will just go back to my continuity center and see. So when you create like a backup, of your virtual machine, you will have the option to be able to restore from that particular backup that you've done. So let me see. I've got one here. Let's see. Just give me a minute, please. I'm just trying to see. I think I created a snapshot on. Okay, it's not there. So this is what you see when you want to, if you go to the backup items, on your or within your machine itself, or within the backup continuity center, because for every, let me pop this back here. For every resource that you have that you can actually back up, you would see on within that resource also that there is a backup and disaster recovery plane, where you would see the backup, the restore point, or the disaster recovery for that particular resource. You can also create an image, just like a snapshot, by creating, an image. And also, if you want to restore from any of, the restore point that you've created, you can leverage on that particular restore point option, and you'll be able to restore from, that particular, for this particular one, I do not have any restore point that I've created. I'm not backed up at this machine, but this machine I included within my disaster recovery, and that's why they were showing us. This one is showing as one of the protected resource within the business continuity center. So it's easy when you back up that particular machine. Let's say you want to back up now and the job runs. If you want to restore, all you need to do is just to restore back that particular machine. If there is a need for you to stop the backup operation while running, you have the option to be able to do so. Same thing when you want to resume from that particular backup operation. So a lot of things, you can actually go in there and actually check how this works. So we have been asked to create as a demonstration a backup for virtual machine and how to configure and review the backup policy. I think we've done the backup policy, but so within here, I can actually go to backup. You can also do this from the business continuity center where you have that single or let's say unified pane where you can actually check all the resources. So you need a recovery vault when you want to back up a virtual machine because it's part of those machines that leverage on the broader option of the backup vault. Now, if you create a new one, which is fine, if you want to select existing recovery vault, you can also select from the options given to you. Like the one I've actually created before is the test vault. Here, then we have like a subtype, policy subtype that tells you, if you do not want to, let's say create or leverage on maybe the new policy or create your own backup policy, you can actually leverage on the ones that we currently have or Azure currently have within the environment. So you can go in there and create your policy, or you can actually leverage the one that has been created by default. So we have the enhanced and the standard. For the standard, this runs once in a day and it only has 5 days operation of retention. What if I want to be able to, or let's say I want to have a retention period of 30 days, then the standard one is not an option. Then I'll surely go with the enhanced, where I can even do multiple backup a day and not just once a day. It supports a lot of other resources like the trusted launch Azure VM, support for VM with Ultra Disks, and even premium SSD, because some of the VM, the one that are supported maybe within the standard, are just the one with HDD. So if you want something that supports your Ultra Disks or the premium disk, you can go with the enhanced type of policy. So like I said, you can also create your own policy to suit whatever you want within the environment. Now, for each of the policies, do you want to have like a full backup, that happens every 4 hours, or you want to have like an incremental backup? So all these things you can actually pop it up when you create a new policy. Then instant restore, yes. Retention of daily backup period, backup point, which is fine. The type of disks that you have, what disks do you want to, because all your data are actually on the disks, and that's what you're actually targeting. So it's so easy. Like I said, all you need to do is just to create your vault, which is the main thing. And after creating your vault, create a backup policy, which includes, the schedule, which includes how your retention actually works within that particular vault, and you'll be able to enable the backup option, or enable backup on that particular resource. And once that is done, if there is a need for you to now restore from that particular backup that you've done, you can go to the restore points and recover from that particular backup. So I'm so sure we've actually looked at the backup policy, how to
Sorry,
configure that on the other time. Yeah,
sorry for interrupting. Yeah, so
that's fine.
I just wanted to ask, the enhanced backup says backup for up to 30 days. So what happens if you want your backup from longer than a month?
So it says retention period. You can configure your own backup policy, to retain more than 30 days if you want to. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So that means you can't use their own existing one if
So
they want.
even at that, I'm not even sure you can have more than 30 days because um I've never checked that, but I'm not so sure because from my own understanding, your retention period, because how long should you be retaining stuff within your vaults? That's going to, it's not going to save you money. Though you can still do it like a yearly retention. Do you understand? But from my own understanding, I think the 30 days is the highest from what I've seen though. But I will check
Okay.
that too and
Okay.
get back to you.
All
I
right.
know you
That's
can
fine.
do more than um 600 and something days for the restore point, but the retention um no. But I will check that too and get
Okay.
back to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So that's how do we now implement the site recovery? I was talking about the fact that so we understand this, and I'm so sure we understand how this works. So the major thing is availability here. And Azure has actually promised 99.95 SLA when it comes to, when you leverage Azure Site Recovery. And what this does is it tries to replicate your workload to a secondary location so that if there is any failure within that particular region, your workload within the secondary region will kick in. So it's a failover to the secondary region. And when everything looks good, after a while within the primary region, then, all traffic will be returned back to, the secondary region. So you do not really need to do anything. It's just like making sure that you've got your virtual machine within a different region should in case there is any issue within your region or the region where you've actually deployed that particular or specific resource, then there can be a failover to the other region and that will kick in. So it's just like a concept of availability, regional peer and the like, all these stuff that we actually looked at when it comes to resource redundancy. So that's how the Azure Site Recovery works. So that's that when it comes to data protection. Any question before I bring up the second slide, which will be the last slide for this particular course? Okay, let me see. I know some people always drop me questions on LinkedIn. I'm just quickly gonna check that now. If I've got any. Okay, so I will just drop this one and we'll pick up the last one. Oh man, did I drop that one? Please give me a minute, please. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Got no questions on there. That's lovely. Oh my, what's going on? This guy doesn't want me to complete this guy today. He doesn't want to open. Come on. What's happening? Oh, this guy doesn't want to come up. Okay, I think it is.
You didn't have backup in another location. Yeah. If you have a backup in another location, I'll just log in,
Yes,
like you are
I do.
teaching us.
Yeah, I
And so you
do.
just don't have, or you don't
And
have,
that's why I have so many virtual machines. In case my
uh,
in case my machine fails at any point in time, I can still continue doing my
yeah,
work. You-
yeah, that's good.
yeah,
But I
you
think it's
get
a function of the subscription, right? In terms of money, the package.
uh, you get this is maybe I need to start backing up for my for my new system. I don't know. Maybe it's this one that is going on. Come up. Yeah, I knew it. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly rush this guy. So what are we going to look at here? I'm going to start talking about what are the learning objectives, and within the learning objectives, what are some of the things we are going to look at? We'll look at, as you can see here, this we are going to talk about how to administer monitoring. And the major resource we are going to be leveraging here is the Azure Monitor. And within the Azure Monitor, we've got other components. So what are we monitoring? How do we monitor and the likes? So the learning objectives for this particular topic, introduction to Azure Monitor, like I said, how to improve incident response with alerting. So, how do we set up these metrics? Oh, we'll get there. We'll get some of the data that we actually look at. Then, how do we analyze the logs? Whatever it's actually going on within the environment. How do we analyze this particular log? So we'll start hearing about custom queries and the like. So I'm just hold on while I continue with it. So introduction to Azure Monitor, which will be the first learning objective that we're going to be talking about. And within here, we are going to look at the Azure Monitor key capabilities. We're going to look at some of the components when it comes to this Azure Monitor. Then we are going to define metrics and logs. What are metrics and logs? No, these are the kind of data that we get, but what are metrics? What are logs? So metrics at some point you will also know that it's just maybe a numerical representation. Then the logs comes in an unstructured way, collection of different metrics. But we are going to look at it and see, or collection of different data, makes up the log. So it doesn't come, it's not just like, okay, how many mangoes that we have in there. 13. That's a metric, but that's not the log. So the logs is going to start looking at some of the things. How many are spoiled, how many came yellow, how many are green, and the like. So we look at it. Then how do we identify the data types? Then we'll describe activity logs event. So let's just quickly look at this. So we are going to describe some of the key components, key capabilities of this particular Azure Monitor, like I said. And what are we looking at? We are looking at the monitor and the metrics. So what are metrics? Like I said, metrics are numerical value. I will not start reading this, but we know that metrics are numerical value. when it comes to the number of traffic coming in, we can actually see, oh, this is it. We want to see, oh, okay. When it comes to maybe the number of machines running after scalability has actually applied, then these, when we look at the number of, let's say, non-compliant resources within, maybe we'll set up a policy and we want to check the non-compliance policy, then we can actually visualize it and say, these are the number, this is the number of machines that are not compliant. These are, the numbers of storage accounts that are not compliant. So when it comes to that, so we are actually leveraging metrics. So metrics are numerical value available from our Azure resource to understand, performance of our system. But when it comes to logs, like I said, are not something we can actually visualize, but these are collections of data, that helps with troubleshooting of our systems. So it might be activity log. So when you go in there, like I said, there are collection of data. A typical example, like I said, would be the activity log. So I'm just going to show you guys how the activity logs will look like. So within the activity logs, we are not just looking at, the machine that we are connecting to. This is going to give us, so let me go to, I think nothing really happened on that system today. Okay, let's pop it up to 24 hours or last week. So this is going to tell you who connected, not like who connected, but what are some of the things, if there is any connection, so you can see the activities on this particular machine. You can see the machine was started by, what operation happened, then the status, the time it started, what's the timestamp, on which subscription, who was the initiator, So you can see here we've got activity, and these are logs. This is how the logs look like. So these are just collection of data that helps all with troubleshooting. Different from the metrics, which are something, or let's say they are numerical values that helps you with the performance or troubleshooting of your system. So once we have the metrics and we have, the logs, so what do we now do with these metrics? What do we do with this log? So we can actually action whatever needs to be actioned. Let's say after checking the log, we notice that, and we are not able to delete the virtual machine. Why are we not able to delete it? Because there is a lock that has been set up on that particular resource. That means we need to perform an action. So we can actually set up an alert to say, if any point in time this log is configured again, we want to get an alert. If at any point in time something happens on that particular resource, we want to get an alert, then we want to go in there to action it, maybe delete the logs, or create a new one that override, if possible, that particular log. So it all depends on what we are actually trying to do. We can also automate this. We set up the alert. Yes, we want to receive an alert when our application goes down, which is fine. But what should be the next thing that needs to be done? Should we have the virtual machine that is running that application? Should we restart it, immediately? Or what are we looking at? So we're going to look at, so these are key capabilities, key components. We have the monitor, we have the logs, we have the metrics, we have the logs, and we have the alert. So for the metrics, we monitor many metrics, we visualize them, but for logs, we query logs. Then let's move on to what are components of the Azure monitor. We just said Azure monitor. but there are lots of things we can actually monitor using this Azure Monitor. There are lots of components. So when it comes to monitoring applications, let's say our application is running within Azure and we want to monitor it, then we leverage what we call the application insights. We have container insights to monitor our containers running within the environment. We can also monitor the virtual machines network, by leveraging network topology and the likes to see, what's actually going on, within the network. Why is it not getting to this phase? I think we talked about some of the virtual network monitoring where we looked at the op and the likes. Then, if we have the insight, how do we now visualize these metrics? I talked about the fact that metrics are numerical values that we can actually visualize. How do we visualize? Where do we visualize them? So we have what we call the workbooks, which we can actually create. Also, we have what we call the dashboard, which we can actually create to visualize whatever going on within the environment. We can also send these to Power BI if, let's say, we have logs and we want to create like let's say a chart, like a pie chart, for this particular log. We want to create some graph with this particular log, so we can actually send this to Power BI, which allows us to visualize. Grafana is one of the systems we are going to be talking about, or one of the tool we are going to be talking about when we get to DevOps, where we use Prometheus to collect the logs, just the same way Azure Monitor connects the logs. Then we actually visualize this within Grafana. Grafana gives you that physical, visual aid also, where you can actually see what's going on within your environment. We just talked about metrics. What about tools that will help us when it comes to logs itself? We talked about the fact that, metrics are numerical values. The logs are collections of data, or whatever issue happening within the environment. Now, we have what we call the metric explorer, which helps to analyze logs. We have what we call the log analytics, where we can actually store our logs, and go in there to analyze whatever logs. So all those visuals, those activity log I just showed you, we can push them to the log analytics, and anytime it is needed, we can go in there and analyze the log. So we want to see, why did it switch off at this particular time? So we can go in there and check the log and see, this is why. This is the person that actually did this. Just like if you go into the Azure portal now and you delete some users, you get what we call the activity log. Or even when you want to sign into the Azure environment, your sign-in will be recorded and stored within the sign-in logs blade. So I can go in there and check, why is this user not able to sign in? This guy, when he was trying to sign in, he canceled the multi-factor authentication activity, and that's why he's not able to sign in. So I can actually go in there to troubleshoot that particular activity and tell you, this is what we need to do. The next one is, how do we now respond? Now, we've set up the tool for checking applications using application insight. We've checked, we've tried to troubleshoot logs or issues within the container using container insight. We've actually been able to push this to dashboard or Power BI. We've actually been able to analyze the log, that we've pushed to log analytics. Now, how do we now respond to this particular, all these things that we just talked about? Now, we can set up what we call the alert. And what this does is, whenever babafemi.com is down, I want to get an alert. I do not even want to get an alert when it's down, because I want to have what we call the smart detection. If the virtual machine that I'm using to host my application gets to 90% of CPU usage, I want to get an alert. So what this does is, I get an alert saying the VP, if the vCPU, is now on 90% usage, what do you need to do? That's an alert. Then I can now add an action to say scale out, create a new virtual machine for me. Do you understand? And that's why you can see the auto scaling here also. So it all depends on what action do you want to perform after you've gotten an alert. Do you just want to get an alert and say, oh, okay, that's fine, that's fine. I do not want to perform anything. So you can actually set up an action immediately you get an alert and respond to whatever, if there is a need for you to now integrate whatever you have here with a different platform, maybe for data, maybe to export the data, import the data, or even check it within your event hub, or even integrate this within the Logic app, then Azure has that capability, or Azure Monitor has that capability, to do this. So these are data that are being monitored. These are data type. You can see the metrics, the logs, the traces changes, everything still comes under the logs. So we have the metrics and the logs. And these are things, what are some of the data that are being monitored when it comes to the Azure Monitor? We have the application, where we leverage the application inside, infrastructure, depending on the kind of infrastructure that you actually, working with. It might be virtual machine. You can even monitor the old platform, your Azure, portal. You can also monitor the Azure portal. You can see application monitoring, guest OS, the operating system that you have on your machine, the Azure resource, the Azure subscription, or someone just created a subscription within the tenant. You want to get a notification. Someone just went in there to create something on that subscription. How many VNet has been created on the subscription? Who created what? You can actually get all that, within the Azure Monitor, and that's because it's part of the activity log, right? And you get that to you. Same thing goes with the tenant monitoring. You want to monitor the whatever is going on in there, the activity, the sign in, some other data also. So you can actually use the Azure Monitor. So you've got a lot of components. You can see the data source, the data platform, and these are the tools. So metrics and logs, we are still back to this, the difference between the metrics and logs. So we just said metrics are numerical data or numerical value that describe some aspect of your system. So you can actually see CPU usage 80%. That's metrics, right? Because I can actually visualize and say, oh, the CPU usage, it's getting to 80%. I do not need to start saying, oh, where is it connecting from? What data source? How did it connect? What's the IP? All those ones are collection of data, organized into a record. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm just looking at the numerical value. I want to make decision based on that particular numerical value. If the CPU usage gets to 80%, then please create, a new virtual machine for me to cater for the traffic that is coming in. Fine, that's the metrics. But when it comes to logs are, it contains, or let me say, they are collection of data or different kind of data organized in records, like you can see here, with different set of properties for each type. So what I'm actually looking at, I want to analyze this. Someone is not able to sign in. I want to check within the sign in blade. I'm seeing this guy is trying to sign in from a country that we do not allow. Just the same way you try to use your DSTV in the UK, and it says this IP, we do not allow this kind of IP, to access our system. They can go in there, and I called DSTV and said, oh, I just paid for premium yesterday, 45,000, 50,000, and I'm not able to log in. And they go in there, okay, let's check what's going on. Are you in Nigeria? Say no. Then you're not, this service is only allowed to customers within Africa. We are so sorry, because they are able to check the log and see where you are trying to connect from, see your IP and the likes. Yeah, TJ.
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to ask for the logs, right? Are they like system triggered logs, or are they users trigger logs, or are they both? So who trigger the logs that we see there?
So it might be based on, it might be user, it might be system. Um, so it all depends on, who is actually doing that particular operation. So
Okay.
like the activity log I showed you, I go in there to start the machine every morning. Do you understand?
Okay.
But because I've set the automatic what's it again? Shutdown on that particular machine, the system goes in there and shut it down at the time I've set, to have that system shut down. So at that point in time, the system is actually doing that. So it all depends on what you've done
Okay.
within your
Okay.
environment. Yeah. So, but majority of what you would see within the environment, would be user triggered. Even when, let's say you're leveraging gun books and the likes, all those things are going to be recorded regardless of the identity that is actually set on it. So the identity that is actually doing the job, you will know, because it's going to be added to the log, and when, well, it is, that particular activity was done and the like. So you have a lot
Yeah.
of things to check in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
you can see, for you to be able to visualize the logs also, you cannot visualize it, if you want to really visualize and have something just like the metrics, then you need to start pushing it to maybe the dashboard, the workbook, Grafana and the likes, Power BI, just for you to be able to visualize those logs also, so um, yep. So activity logs, events, and I'm so sure this was what one of the things you were actually asking of, and I just told you, any activity going on within the portal, we are being queried. Now you can actually push this to a storage account if you want to archive it, let's say after 30 days, because if you keep your logs are not going to be there forever. The sign-in logs, depending on the license that you have, some are there for 7 days, some are there for 30 days. You understand? And you do not want to lose. So you can go to the portal now and look for signing logs of 3 months ago. It's not possible. So let's now say we want to have an audit and we want to check what happened 6 months ago. That means we'll lose it, right? We'll not be able to check anything. So you want to have this push to maybe a storage account. You want to have it stream to maybe an event hub, or you want to have it, visualize within your Power BI. So you can actually do a lot when it comes to the logs, regardless of the kind of logs that you're getting, even if it's signing logs or the activity logs. So how do we query this? This is just like what I showed you guys. Activity log, what's the operation? What operation are you trying to perform? I'm trying to update a virtual machine network. And what's the status? It failed. The timestamp, the time, the subscription, you know, the severity of that particular log, and even the initiator. So I can actually see everything. And this is how, and this is why we said logs are, collections of different data organized in records, to give us that access to be able to troubleshoot what is going on within our system. And that's that. So the next one is, how do we now improve our incident response with alerting? We've talked about the metrics. We've talked about the logs. So what should be the next line of action? And that's what we're going to be looking at there. To do that, we're going to look at how to manage alerts within our Azure monitor. How do we create an alert rule? Do you see how the alert rule, what and what should be in there? you know, um, the metrics. So, okay, if our CPU usage gets to 80%, are we leveraging the metrics or are we leveraging logs? So we'll use that to create an alert rule to say, if this gets to this point, please create an alert, and the alert needs to be sent out to what we call the action group. So within the action group, we want to say, what should happen? Should we send out a notification on your phone? Do you want to get a notification or like a push notification? Do you want to get an email, a text message? And which group or which user do you want to send this to? So we create all that within the action group. Then let's demonstrate how we can actually create an alert. And that's it. So I've been talking, who can actually explain this particular architecture. Is easy. It's just for you to look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just explain, this architecture. It's easy, just based on what I've actually talked about here just now. I talked about the alert rule, and I talked about the action groups. So who can actually explain this? Anyone want to give it a try?
Okay, let me just give it a try.
Yeah, please do.
So the first one is Azure resources.
Yep.
So that's where all the data and information will be gathered from your various resources, and they would then flow into your monitor, your Azure monitor in the form of logs and metrics, so you can
Fine.
see,
Yeah.
can visualize.
So
Yeah.
your Azure resource emits those information, those telemetry, and what
Yeah.
are things they are getting out? Those are metrics and logs, right? So
Yeah.
it goes into your resources are feeding the Azure monitor. So everything happening within your resource, regardless of the kind of resource you're working on, even the portal, has been pushed to the Azure monitor. Fine. Now go
Yeah.
ahead, please.
Yeah. So from there, once you've seen what's happening in terms of your log analytics, your metrics, and all that, you can decide to create, alerts so that to trigger some actions that you want to see. Like, for instance, like you mentioned, like if your CPU, your vCPU usage is like up to like a certain percentage, you want it to, to kind of automatically, what's it called? Um,
To get a lot.
Yeah, no,
or
so once
or
up to,
push out create a new virtual machine,
yes,
auto scale
yes,
it out. Yeah.
auto scale, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. So it's auto scale to a new, resource and all that. So yeah, depending on any alert you want to set or notification or prompts that you want it to derive, then from there you can push it to a kind of push notifications,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then that can now warrant an actions from you. Maybe you need to call someone or contact or send an email or even close the log if it has been action. If it's log that has to do with user unable to log in and all that, and after you've looked into it, you can then, and after you've actioned it, then you can notify the person that the query has been treated and it's about to close.
Lovely, thanks. So I'll just quickly round it up. So the first one shows your Azure resource, like Tija said, you know, and those resources are actually pushing out, those logs. Whatever activity going on within those resources, they are being pushed to, the Azure monitor, either as metrics or as logs, depending on the kind of log. Then these are evaluated within the alert tool. You are going to be setting up from this diagram, from this architecture. You can see we have a virtual machine in place in scope. Then we are looking at the CPU usage. If the CPU usage is more than 80%, schedule evaluation. It might be, let's say the CPU usage is at 80% or more than 80% for 10 minutes. Then please, the condition has been met, whatever condition we've set has been met, then go to the third stage, which is to fire an alert. So once that CPU usage stays there for 30 minutes or for 10 minutes, and is 80%, then we'll create an alert. And within your alert, we have what we call the alert rule that we are going to be looking at, which is what has actually been checked. Then how do we now push this alert to whoever we want to push it to? Whoever we want to push it to, whatever action we want is all included within the action group. And the last one, which is going to now be the action itself, where do we want to send this to? Do we want to call? Do we want to send a text message? Do we want to have a push notification or whatever we need to do? And that's what's going on within the four. So we're going to create an alert and configure. So, but we'll push for now. We'll come back to this. How do we create an alert? And this is what you can actually see. So we want to have CPU usage percentage, which is the number 2. We are saying, please, if the CPU usage is more than 80%, okay, this is informational. Just send me an alert. It doesn't have to be. I think your alert needs to be together by, I think you have to be 7 or something that you get an alert. So failure anomalies, let's say you are just, this is what we call the smart detection. Before anything happens, I want to be, I want to get an alert. So if anything, if it's severity 1 or 2, instantly, maybe you want to get an alert. This information, you just get an informational alert because you just feel like, okay, this is CPU usage at 80%. Yes, I want to go in there and do whatever, maybe manually, or you want to even set an auto scaling to create additional virtual machine to cater for the incoming traffic. So you can also set a smart detector alert where you are saying, oh, based on this information, if I leave this particular failure for a while, the application is going to go down. But before there is a downtime, you want to get an alert and act on that particular alert. So your alert rule combines the resource to be monitored, the signal or data from the resource, and the combination, and like what we've seen. So a typical example was the virtual machine we talked about. Okay, this virtual machine, if the CPU usage is more than 80% for this number of minutes, please fire an alert. So you can actually have these configured, and that's how we configure an alert. Now, we've said we want to be able to fire an alert. Who are we sending the alert to? What do we want to send? And that's where the action groups comes in. And this is where we define the notification on action. When an alert is triggered, what do we want to do? Do we want to send an email? Do we want to push? Do we want to call? Then who do we want to send this to? And this is where the name, and the selected action or the selected group that we want to send it to will happen. So you can add one alert, you can add up to 5 action groups and say, oh, okay, in this particular action group, I just want to have maybe email notification and the like, and this is where this thing should be sent to. Or we want to configure an action, after this is triggered, we should run an automation run book, to run a PowerShell that will restart the virtual machine. Anything you want to do. So, but within the action group, this is where we declare what needs to be done when it comes to the notification settings, what kind of actions need to be done, and who are we sending this particular alert to. And that's where we declare that. We talked about alert, and you could see, based on what we've actually talked about, we are talking about the CPU usage 80%. You can see it was more related to metrics, numerical value on that particular virtual machine. What if we want to monitor, or what if we want to analyze the logs that we get within our Azure infrastructure or Azure resource? Then that's what we're going to be looking at there. The log analytics usage, we have what we call the log analytics. Like I said, all your logs goes in there. You can actually start pushing your logs in there, and you can go in there and query your logs and say, oh, within this particular workspace, I want to check what has happened in this within this time frame. Yeah, it stores your log also, but when it comes to cost optimization, it is not the way to go. So at some point, you must start streaming this to an event hub, or you want to even send this to a storage account, so you can actually do that from there. You query the log analytics data. How do we query the log analytics data? So we have what we call the custo language. So just the same way, I want to have, I will show you how the custo works. So, but let's say someone restarted the system and we want to see all the logs related to system restart. So we can say event, then we declare the event. We declare the event that we are looking for, which is system restart. Then within that script also, we'll put the time frame and query it. So we are going to see how to do that also. So let's go ahead. So the logs analytics, and this is what I said, you can actually collect and analyze all the data generated within your resource. They are being pushed to that particular log analytics. Your logs are being pushed to the Azure Monitor. The Azure Monitor, one of the components, you have the log analytics there. You can also create a workspace where you start pushing those logs to, because after a while, like I said, your logs are going to, let's say the sign-in logs only stays there for 7 days, depending on the kind of license that you have within your environment. If your license is just free, I think it's just for 7 days. If it's premium, it lasts for 30 days and it just disappears after then. So what you can do is you can create a workspace and start pushing this to the workspace. It helps you retain that particular logs, just the same way you want to have it within the logs within Azure. You can go in there and search for whatever you need to search by writing a log query, like what they've said in there. So let's go ahead. We'll come back to the stuff, the query, but I will show you. So how do we create a workspace? Like I said, those logs within your environment only stays for a while, but we want those logs to be there for a long time, maybe for 2 years, for 3 years, whatever we want to set. So you can create what we call a log analytics workspace, which is just like a storage unit where you can actually store your logs, just to keep your log the same way you have it, or where as how Azure has actually generated it. But for cost optimization, you might not want to have these, or have your log stored in there for a long time. You rather just push it maybe to a storage account, which comes with lesser charge. But the only caveat is, if at any point in time you need to query those logs, you need to still push them back, then to be able to query it. You might not have the logs, or except if you start downloading it within the storage account and you start querying it. You might not have that same feel, or journey when you're actually leveraging log analytics workspace. Data. How do we query this data? Like I said, there is a language called the coastal query, and that's what we use in querying our data. So we can actually go in there and check what do we want to check, the activity that are happen on this particular resource, signing activities within our environment. We can go in there and just query it. So a typical example of logs, and what does this one say is, what the first thing will be the event for sure. And here it says where event level name is error. So anywhere there is error within our environment, if within the particular log, within that particular resource, let's say a virtual machine, and you want to see, okay, are there any logs that have been sent in there, or are there any point in time where this system actually failed or errored out, and you want to just check. So I will just go in there and say, I want to look for an event, but the event name should be error. the time generated should be more than a day. Then summarize the error count, maybe by the computer. I just want to I do not want to have so many. I just want to have the top 10 error counts. And and that's what this particular log says. Your query stays. So you can actually put in the query here, and it's just going to go look for any event with an error. It might be event level, it might be severity level, anything that comes with an error. Then the time generated, the time that particular log has been generated, and you want to have only the top 10 queried. So you do not want to have everything queried. So this is how we write the logs. It's not as if it's just normal English. Okay. And you know what has happened? That brings us to the end of this our Azure 104 class. Like I said, by next week we'll start having a different stuff in here. I don't know how many Saturdays do we still have in. Let me see. I want to see, because I do not want this to. We've been here for quite a while. Let me see if we still have two. Oh, unfortunately, we have one. We have one left. Okay, so next week we are going to do, or we're going to look at the labs. We do not know how many we can actually look at, but we are going to, the 2 hours, we are going to try to manage it well and look at, some of the labs there in there. And this is the point where I will need you also to go back in there to start practicing the labs. Then the upper week, I don't know, depending on how fast we could go next week, we might have to start our AZ 500, which is the security, or we still look at some of the labs, if need be. But most appropriate thing is we might still be looking at the labs on the 1st of November. So, but it all depends on how far we can actually go next week. Do you have any question before we call it a day? All right. If you do not have any question, I'll talk to you guys next week.
A quick question, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about. Thanks so much. It's about the are we off YouTube now first?
What?
Are we